Hey everyone, welcome. This is a special episode that we're dropping today. It's just me, Tom, and Maggie today. We had a very small window to interview this guest, so we took it. We'll see Mark next time. Zen Honeycutt, she founded Moms Across America. She's been outspoken about a ton of issues relating to food and environmental toxins, which she sees as seriously harming the health of America's children. And look, she's a major figure in the Make America Healthy Again movement. She, I think, would be considered one of the major leaders of that movement. So coming up next, we're going to have a conversation with Zen Honeycutt. Hello.
Hey.
So, look, this is, like we said, a special conversation. It is me, Tom, and Maggie, and we're going to talk to Zen Honeycutt. So, guys, look, we had this opportunity to speak with her. She was available, and we kind of grabbed that bull by the horns, And there's a couple of things we've had the conversation. It was super interesting. We're going to play it for you in a second. And why did we want to talk to Zen Honeycutt? I mean, there were a few things. One of the things we hear a lot from our listeners is really trying to understand the sort of difference between the MAHA movement and the MAGA movement, and how choices often made on the MAGA side affect the MAHA side. I mean, one of the major things that they ask about are these rollbacks, these environmental rollbacks that have come out of the EPA, big decisions that often seem out of line with MAHA. So we really just wanted to ask her about that, Tom.
Yeah, it's something that's been kind of perplexing to us. There's so much attention on HHS, and obviously RFK Jr. is there. But at the same time, in a different cabinet position, in a different department, there's like a different reality, a different world going on. And at the EPA, the headlines spinning out of that agency are all about deregulating, challenging climate change, rolling back rules on industry.
Bringing back pesticides.
Yeah. RFK, who's, of course, the leader of the MAHA movement, he had a lifetime of fighting on the environmental plane of this country, trying to, cap these pollutants and to restrict these toxins from seeping into our ground, into our water, into our air. And now it's like, what's going on over there? And it's not getting talked about that much. It's getting reported on, but in the conversation where the energy is, it's about food dyes. It's about, it's about food. It's about vaccines. It's about ASIP. It's about all these really important things, but we're not sort of talking about the EPA. We've brought it up a lot. And, MAHA folks we bring it up to say, yeah, I don't like what I'm hearing out of that, but nobody's really engaged in it.
Right.
So, that's part of the genesis of talking to Zen Honeycutt, because she is. And she's trying to wave a big flag saying, that
we're not okay with this.
Serious. We're not okay with this. And there could be consequences, or there will be consequences at the ballot box if this doesn't get straightened out.
Yeah, absolutely. And Maggie, the other thing we talked about was we wanted to bring it to her attention about these cuts that are taking place across the science infrastructure, and really kind of get her take on that.
Yeah, I feel like it's really interesting to hear from her perspective about what they think about these cuts, because I know, as my experience as a researcher and my colleagues and my friends who are being so heavily impacted by these cuts and halts to research and what it'll mean. And so just understanding what the perception, especially from someone prominent in the MAHA community, is very different than what's going on. So we need to be better on the science side of communicating what's happening to the research. What are those research outcomes that are maybe going to be lost or never come out because of all the things that are changing right now?
I want to make it really clear that this conversation, you're going to be listening to it. Yeah. We didn't try to debate her on every single thing she said. We wanted to hear her out. There were certain things that we definitely engaged with her on, but I know there are things that are going to be said that probably many of our listeners don't agree with. And like we say on our show, we do try to provide this platform to really hear people out. And at the same time, we want to reflect what we're hearing from scientists, from people, from doctors, from people that we're in regular communication with. So coming up next, we're going to be joined by Zen Honeycutt. And we want to welcome Zen Honeycutt. As we said, she is the founder of Moms Across America, an organization whose motto is Empowered Moms, Healthy Kids, which aims to educate and brings attention to genetically modified foods, pesticides, toxins in our environment that could impact our health. And Zen is considered a major leader within the Make America Healthy Again movement. So welcome to the show, Zen.
Thank you so much, Brenda. And thank you, Tom, everybody, Maggie. Thanks for having me.
So, I just want to start off by reading some headlines that have been written recently about what's going on at the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the head of that is Lee Zeldin. And I just want to get your reaction. This is just from a few days ago from Newsweek. EPA seeks to bring back twice banned pesticide. Then we've got EPA moves to end climate regulation under Clean Water Act. EPA moves to cancel key climate regulations that limit pollution. And then last but not least, Trump EPA moves to weaken drinking water limits on toxic forever chemicals. What is your reaction to that, Zen?
Well, I'm horrified as a mother who is working constantly to try to reduce the toxic exposure to my children and to the children all across the country. I don't understand the logic behind going backwards, right? I do understand that Trump is very committed to supporting businesses to thrive in America. And there are some regulation, which can be very cumbersome to these corporations in being able to make products and to make a profit. However, I don't think we should be throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, and get rid of all regulations, for corporations that are necessary to have a foundational, structure for safety and protecting American citizens. Clearly PFAS, dicamba, many of these pollutions are harmful, and we should be reducing the American people's exposure to them, not increasing their exposure to them.
I just want to back up to, I think it was May that the Make America Healthy Again Commission issued sort of this big blueprint, this big, report. And if you look at who's on the commission, Lee Zeldin's on it, RFK Jr.'s on it, the head of the USDA is on it. A lot of different people, a lot of different stakeholders are coming to the table. They wrote that to make our children healthy again, we must begin with a shared understanding of the magnitude of the crisis and subsequently what's driving it. And I think they identified like four biggies, four things that were really driving this. And they said that children are exposed to an increasing number of synthetic chemicals, some of which have been linked to development issues, chronic disease. The current regulatory framework should be continually evaluated to ensure that chemicals and other exposures do not interact together to pose a threat to the health of our children. So, like, on the one hand, they're identifying that chemicals in our air and our water may be or are linked to some serious issues. But then the second part of that is just a little bit interesting. They say the current regulatory framework should be evaluated. What do you hear in that?
What Trump is very committed to businesses in America's thriving. That is, I'm afraid, taking the forefront in this decision making to making America healthy again. And I think that there really needs to be a much stronger, truthful, factual check and balance for making both things work. We want businesses to thrive, but we also need our children to be able to procreate for America to have a future in the first place, right? And many people are concerned about cancer with these chemicals, glyphosate, for instance. But frankly, cancer is practically a privilege. You can't be born, you can't get cancer if you're not born. And what we're looking at is right now facing pesticide immunity shields. I know you didn't ask about this right now, but this is just what's happening right now is that the EPA is standing aside and the corporations are pushing these pesticide immunity shields, meaning 57,000 chemical products could possibly have immunity from lawsuits. That means accountability and safety. And these chemicals, out of the 57,000, we know that 6,400 of them were pesticides that were granted emergency use authorization. This is according to the Center for Biological Diversity and the GAO, the government, accountability offices, right? So their database. And that means those 6,400 never had any safety testing at all. No safety testing at all. And we're going to give them complete immunity from lawsuits. I don't think this is a good idea. We also know that 86 of them that we know of have been banned in other countries. for good reason. And it's science. It's like math. It doesn't matter if it comes from Switzerland or Brazil or China or the United States. Science is science. And they have banned them in other countries predominantly for reproductive reasons. And out of these chemicals, a vast majority of them are made, unfortunately, in China, which is not known to have our best interest at heart. Especially they're not rigorous on safety standards. And for instance, all of the companies that make glyphosate, 86% of them are Chinese. I'm very concerned about that they are not going to be saying, hey, this is a chemical that, is actually going to biodegrade in the soil. No, it doesn't. They lied to us about this. Monsanto has been known to say, oh, this chemical doesn't collect in your breast milk or in your body. It passes harmlessly through the urine. That's a lie. Now they're facing 100 and I think 60,000 lawsuits,
Right.
and they've had to set aside $12 billion, to pay it out. I don't feel sorry for them. I don't. I actually went to their shareholder meetings, spoke in front of 1,200 people, asked them to change direction. I said, please change direction. Go and invest in new technology to, break down trash, for renewable energy, to clean up the water supply. Move your R&D dollars into something that's good for the planet.
Right.
And they didn't do it.
Right.
So now they're facing the music, and this is what's happening in America today.
I guess the question is what's occurring at the EPA vis-a-vis deregulation and these chemicals,
Mhm.
is it worse than the good that you see that's going on at the HHS with things like food dyes and attention to food and other things that are in the works too? I don't mean to sort of
There's a good
minimize.
argument for that, right? Because PFAS is much more harmful than food dyes, right? Dicamba, much more harmful than Blue Lake, or yellow or whatever. I mean, they can also be carcinogenic, and they are very pervasive in our food. So I can't say that, one is dicamba and PFAS are known to be very, very harmful, and the others could be very harmful. I just don't know. You just don't know how much somebody is consuming of those. If somebody's eating Skittles every day,
Sure.
they have a much higher chance of getting cancer than somebody who's exposed one time possibly to dicamba. But you don't know that for sure because you don't know how many toxins are in their body already. So it's really difficult to say with these toxic chemicals which one is more harmful than the other. Even glyphosate, which Dr. Don Huber says is going to make DDT look like mouthwash, it's mostly incredibly harmful because it's used so much because of the ubiquitous exposure to it, right? So it's really hard to say because we don't know people's exposure to these toxins. But we do know that who is in the EPA right now is primarily not MAHA friendly. And it's counter to what MAHA is trying to do, to have Kyle Kunkler be the head of the chemical division, to have Nancy Beck, Lee Zeldin. I'm not holding out a ton of hope. I mean, I always have some hope, but he has a track record of pesticide support. What I am hearing is that there is an intense corporate pressure from the pesticide industry on the White House and on the MAHA movement in general, on the administration, to not lessen the availability of pesticides, right? To allow our farmers to have access to all the pesticides that they have access to right now, which is 1,200 pesticides. Right. If we took away the 86 pesticides that we know that have been banned in other countries, in Switzerland, in China, in Europe, you go to these other countries, you eat the food, you don't get sick. You come back to America, you get sick. This happens over and over and over again. If we ban just those 86 pesticides that have been banned in other countries for good reason, we would have 1,067 pesticides left in the toolbox for our farmers. I think that's enough. But these corporations don't want any limitation to their sales and to the profits that the CEOs enjoys. So what we're doing is allowing the manipulation of our elected officials and our administration to protect the profits of these corporations. Meanwhile, our families get sick and we rack up thousands, hundreds and thousands of dollars of medical costs, that lead to bankruptcy. That's the number one reason for bankruptcy, that can then lead to homelessness. So we have Americans losing their only house, while CEOs of Bayer and Syngenta and ChemChina, they buy a third or fourth beach house.
Zen, it's interesting. We have a lot of our listeners who say, who may feel differently about the MAHA agenda in certain aspects. And one of the things that they are left kind of head scratching on is the idea that, like, how can you claim wins on food dyes when all this stuff is happening at the EPA? Is that something that you actually agree with, that sentiment, that it's hard to kind of claim these wins when there's something? I mean, I saw you say somewhere that you're in the fight of your life. Like, you've got your guy in charge right now. Why are you not, like, skipping with happiness? Why are you in the fight of your life?
Well, because the chemical corporations are continuing to influence this administration. But I want to be clear that we should celebrate every single win that we have. This is an historical time, and I'm thrilled that Bobby Kennedy is there. I worked my tail off to get him in there, right? I knocked on at least 77 doors when I was actually really pretty sick, because that's just what needed to be done. And we had thousands and thousands of our moms, contact the administration to make sure that he was put into office. And there have been incredible wins. There have been changes that have happened that are going to affect future generations because they're structural or because they are collaborative rather than regulatory. If you look at the food dye thing, the beauty about that is that they said, we are committed to getting food dyes out of the food supply. They didn't say it was a ban. They didn't cause regulation. They just said, let's come to the table and talk about it. And I think they have 40% of food companies saying, yes, okay, let's do that. That's the magic of Bobby Kennedy. He is compassionate, he's brilliant, he's humble, and he's collaborative. And if you disagree with him on any type of science around, vaccines, just go look at the science and look at what he has looked at and look at what he's committed to, which is transparency and gold standard science. So I think we should celebrate every single win that comes out of this administration, whether you're Republican or Democrat, because they're wins for our health. Whether you're Republican or Democrat, eating less pesticides or less food dyes is a good thing. We should celebrate everything that is happening, but we should also stay on top of them regarding the things that are not happening. And I want to make sure that the Republicans, especially, well, and all of them, that are voting for things like this Section 453, the Pesticide Immunity Shield, which we'll get into, that they are clear that we moms are not beholden to party lines. We're going to support the candidates that put health and safety of our children first. And that's why we started the new Moms Across America movement. Our tagline is Yes, Ma'am. It's a 501c3, and we're championing policy and public servants who put children, health, safety, and America's future first. And that means we will be very active regarding legislation and getting MAHA candidates in office. So this is the time to do that. This is just, we had to expand and make sure that happens. And it will be bipartisan, no matter, we have a checklist that we're going to be putting out. Right now we have 5 top things. We may expand that. And we don't care what party the candidate is from. If they are in alignment with some of these goals, which are solely about health, then we will be putting that on our website and letting people know about it.
Well, it sounds like what I'm hearing you say is that, with the midterms coming up, even if you helped elect Secretary Kennedy, perhaps others decided to pull the lever for Donald Trump to get Secretary Kennedy into the White House or into HHS, that you're not necessarily going to be backing MAGA candidates if they're not aligned with the MAHA agenda.
That's correct. And by the way, we did not elect Bobby Kennedy. That was not an election. That was an appointment. But we helped, right? We helped with raising awareness about that. I want to be clear because we're a 501c3. So we, when we were doing those activities, that was solely to educational and awareness. But going forward for the midterm elections, yes, we are interested in getting people into office who are going to support the MAHA agenda, which is health and safety, or it will be the Moms Across America movement, criteria. And we will not compromise our children's health about that. That is, when we see my representative from my district voted to support Section 453 to be in there. I am tomorrow putting out to everybody I know that we should support his opponent. That's just, I will not accept that somebody from my district is, actually voted for the pesticide immunity shield. And I will be having a fundraiser for his opponent. I will be making sure that everybody knows that this man needs to be replaced. So I'm sure from what I'm seeing on the chat boxes that everybody is getting that set up already. There's a whole list of the Republican senators that voted for Section 453 in the House appropriations to go forward. That section, can I talk about it?
Sure.
Okay. It's still in the House appropriations bill. Next, it'll go to rules in early September, and then if it clears through there, it would go to the House floor. The Senate also needs to, if they want to, have this section passed in the House in appropriations bill at all, the Senate would need to introduce it. That would happen this week or in September if they want to do that. They may not do that, and then therefore, if there's no bill that gets voted on and goes forward, it would be called a continuing resolution, and we would not have a new appropriations bill, right? We would be riding on old budgets, which has happened for many, many years. It would be the same old politics, right? That would be happening. So that's one possible thing. It may not pass. But if the Senate introduces it, it goes through rules and House. This section 453 makes it so that there would be no new labeling changes, guidelines, or policy made to any cancer classification or any chemical unless there was a full human health assessment. And the last full human health assessment for glyphosate, which we all know that this is what this is all about, is since 1993. So it would wipe out 32 years of science that could be utilized in a court case, right? So if somebody were to file for failure to warn, which is what they want to stop, they want to stop that from happening. There's been, over 100, I think 60,000 lawsuits. They want to stop that from happening. And so if somebody files a failure to warn, then the company, Bayer, would say, well, we couldn't warn you because the EPA label says that glyphosate doesn't cause cancer. Right. And it says that because it's based on the last human health assessment. And, and they want to keep it that way, not including the last 32 years of science. So it doesn't prevent somebody from filing a lawsuit. So technically they're accurate. And when they say, oh, it doesn't prevent anybody from filing a lawsuit. Well, that's because we're Americans and you could look at me funny and I could file a lawsuit against you. Right. Anybody can file paperwork for anything. Right. But this section 453 means nobody would win, because they can't use 32 years of science. And we all know the science that was there in the first place in 1993 was corrupted. They knew in 1985 that glyphosate could cause cancer. There's evidence for that. That's part of the reason why all of these people have been winning lawsuits, because there's so much science to show that it does cause cancer.
One of the things you're bringing up science, you're bringing up gold standard, and, I do want to kind of reflect some of the concerns that we're hearing from the scientific community about the massive cuts that are currently underway inside HHS. We have been speaking with people who are studying chronic disease, who are studying nutrition, who are studying diabetes, who are studying how nutrition impacts the growth of cancer cells. How do we make sense of these cuts? We've really spoken with these scientists, asked about conflicts of interest, things like that. Does the MAHA movement support these cuts?
For the most part, yes, because what has happened previously has been completely ineffectual and corrupt. And you cannot keep people in these administrations that are corrupt. You have to get them out. This is why Bobby got rid of everybody on the ACIP committee, right, at the CDC. You cannot have an environment of integrity if there's somebody in there. You have to get them out. And
I want to jump in for a second because, and not to litigate everything about every single decision that's been made on HHS, but one of the criticisms that's given is that the word corrupt is used without a lot of evidence to show for it. There are, the CDC has databases of whether or not folks have that conflict of interest, and those are all there for people to see. And right now, the current ASIP community actually hasn't presented any of their things to even show whether they have conflict of interest or not. That should probably be concerning to you as well. So I just, on one level, if we're trying to make America healthy again, and we've decided that an entire population is corrupt and who are people who've really studied science, how can we lay the message out that this is not just a movement that is for a tiny percentage of people who only believe a certain way of doing things, that you are a movement that is willing to bring in people who have diverse perspectives and who look at the science in the way that you want to look at the science?
Well, I think this administration is ideologically one of the most diverse cabinets that has ever been compiled, first of all. And second of all, the definition of corrupt, you may be thinking about something different from what I am. For me, corruption doesn't just mean that they have investments in companies and they're getting money like many of the ASIP people did. They got money from the vaccines that they authorized, right? So they were like kickbacks. There was commissions or whatever you want to call it. They got money. There was a conflict of interest in approving products, blanket unanimous approval without looking at science, because they were getting money from it. That's one form of corruption. Another form of corruption is when you're like me, a mom who has brought science to the FDA, to the USDA, to the CDC for 13 years, showing toxins in vaccines, in food, in water, in baby food, in tampons, in breast milk, in urine, in our children's bodies, and they did nothing about it. Not only did they do nothing about it, they sent back, when I asked them for Freedom of Information Act, like documents on, let's just say, glyphosate in vaccines, which we found 9 years ago, glyphosate in all of the childhood vaccines that we tested. They did nothing about it. And when I did a Freedom of Information Act, I got back 170 pages. Over 70% of them were completely redacted. So the person who sent those documents to me may not have investments in Pfizer and be getting kickbacks. They may not be that kind of corrupt, right? But they're a part of a system which does not deliver the truth to the American people. And the American people see that as corrupted. We see a lack of action as corrupted. We see a lack of regulation with people following through and doing their jobs as corrupted. But when people asked me in this very beginning, aren't you concerned about the cuts they're going to make to regulations? I said, I think Bobby can do more with 8,000 people at the HHS who would not be corrupted than 80,000 people who are. So I am for people being in the administration that cannot be bought. That's what I am for. And I don't care if it's 8,000 or 80,000, but they cannot keep taking money from or being influenced by the corporations who do not have our best interest at heart.
Is that what's going on right now at the EPA?
It looks to me like, the people that are there are putting the interests of the chemical corporations before the health of the people. And that's, to be fair, that's not a new thing. We have never had an EPA person who's been like, oh yeah, let's put health and safety first. Maybe the first group when Rachel Carson, sort of sparked the initiation back in 1973. Maybe there were some, good people back there. Actually, I have a book called Poison Spring by this man, E.G. Valientos, he worked at the EPA for, I don't know, 20 something years. And he describes in here the utter corruption that has been happening way back since the 70s. And so, yeah, it's not a new thing that there's.
So what is your message to MAHA? We have a lot of people from MAHA listen. What is your message to them about where focus now needs to go? Where you've got RFK and HHS, things are changing. You feel good about that. What do you want? What's your simple message for MAHA when it comes to the environment, streams, rain, ground, pesticides? What is your focus about? What should their focus be right now?
I would like people to consider, right? Everybody, please think critically, think for yourself, that regardless of how you feel about climate change, right? There's a lot of disagreement around that. For me, that is not really the reason for climate change, why climate might be changing right now, is not the primary issue. The end result is the issue. The end result of having our waters polluted, our food polluted, our air polluted, that is the focus that we can all agree upon and that we all need to be relentless about right now. We are in one of the most critical times in history. Are we going to let chemical corporations have carte blanche, not have any accountability, and not have to spend research and development money on safety, right? If they can make whatever they want and poison us with whatever they want, they're going to keep doing that. So are we going to let chemical companies off the hook for accountability and safety, or are we going to hold them to account and say, make what you want, sell what you want, but make sure it's safe? Or you're going to have a tidal wave of moms coming after you. So I want the MAHA movement to continue to be that tidal wave of moms and scientists and doctors and farmers who will not let up, who will not give up, and who will stay on top of this administration and any administration to come and say, we will not just let you do a job for the pesticide companies. You're there to do your job for us. Keep in mind, I'm very good friends with an elite performance coach. Elite performance, right? These athletes have to work their tails off every day to be an athlete. He brought up the point to me, Zen, a politician doesn't have to train to be a politician. Anybody can run for office. AOC, Schwarzenegger, right? Trump, anybody can run for office. And you know why? It's because their only job is to represent the people who put them in office. All they have to do is do the bidding of the people who elected them. The problem is right now, our elected officials are not doing that. They are making decisions based on the chemical corporations who are funding them instead of the people who have elected them. And the Native American tribe, I think it's called the Haudenosaunee tribe. I have to get that pronunciation right, but it's a very long H name. It's a very large indigenous tribe in Native America, in America. And in the National Museum of Native American History in DC, every time I go there, I try to take a little time to go get free education in the museums. And I walked in one day and there was this huge, beautiful headdress, black and white, of a chief. I mean, it must have been 10 feet tall. It was huge. And on the bottom was a little copper plaque that said the H tribe, right? Haudenosaunee, or whatever the name is of the tribe. The mothers elect the chieftains of the tribe. And to this day, the mothers continue to hold the power to remove a leader based on lack of performance. Now, why is that? Why are those mothers the ones that elect the tribe? It's because everybody in the tribe, or the community, as you might call it, knows that the mothers make decisions based on the best interest of the community, not of themselves, right? Of the tribe. The mothers, well, they've been rising up for decades now. It's been some mothers I know have been working on this for 25 years, right? I've been personally in the game here for 13 years. It has been every day, full time. I was volunteer for many, many years, but now it's a full-time, gig for me to make sure that we get these toxins out of our food supply. And the mothers are being listened to and being heard, and their voices are finally being amplified because everybody knows what we're saying is for the best interest of everyone. Whether you're a Democrat, Republican, Forward Party, Tea Party, Green Party, no party, it doesn't matter. We want your children to be safe. This issue is a community issue. It is a national issue. It is a global issue. We all need to know about GMOs, about glyphosate, which it can also cause miscarriages, dicamba, paraquat, these 78, 86, how many thousands of chemicals in our food supply that cause reproductive damage. Everybody needs to know about this in order for our reproductive organs to work. So this is why I do this. It's so that my children and your children can experience the profound love that it is to have one's own child. So we can be proud also to give them a future where they're healthy and safe.
I want to leave you with one thought on something you had said, which is, these elected officials are responsible to the people who elected them. And I would just add one sort of additional phrase to that, which is they're actually responsible for people who also didn't elect them. And they're responsible for everyone. So I would say there's a lot of people in this country who are feeling left out of the MAHA agenda, who, for reasons, they're not corrupt. I would push back on that. By even the definition you're saying, they're people who believe in gold standard science. They're people who have worked their entire lives at trying to make America healthy again. And I think it's time in the next phase of MAHA to bring some of these people back into the fold. Not everyone, I totally hear you, but I would really like to encourage you guys to have a real hard look. You've zeroed out stuff And as you're bringing people back in, there are a lot of good people in there who want to engage in this fight with you. I will tell you that right now. So I just want to leave you with that thought.
Well, yeah, I would urge everybody, just for one more phrase about that, I would urge everybody. I have a book called Unstoppable. It's right behind me. And I was told in the very beginning, you're never going to make a difference against Monsanto, right? And they've had to sell their campus. They had to sell out. They're pretty much, they're done in the US, right? So I have, through my movement, through our moms, through my action, shown that if you do not give up and that you keep going based on your commitment, I'm committed to creating a future of health and freedom. If these people who feel left out of MAHA, feel like, don't allow that circumstance to stop you. Keep doing what you're doing. If you keep doing good work, it will be acknowledged. It will be utilized. Bobby doesn't care if you're a Democrat or Republican or if you're
yeah, but Bobby needs to fund them.
Yeah, well, he's going to do the best he can. They need to show their work is valuable and will contribute to this movement. That's what you need to just keep doing good work. And I believe when you can continue to do good work, it will eventually, or could be much more likely, to be included in what's happening. And keep in mind that what's happening is based on a lot of the good work that these people have contributed to for a long time, right? There's science that has been done for decades on these chemicals. Right. There's people,
and I'm going to send you some of the stories, if that's okay, Zen. I think that there's some really great work that's being left on the cutting room floor, as they say in television. I'm going to send that to you, because I think I'd like you to know the excellent work that's been stopped in its track right now that has to do with chronic illness, diabetes, cancer, and has nothing to, and no one got a penny from any industry for it. So I'm going to send that to you.
Great. Yeah, please do. And please know that we are not oblivious to the fact that there's a whole lot of systems structure right now that's collapsing. It's a mess, and it's going to get messier, and people are going to be cut that shouldn't have been cut. And there's, money it's a mess right now. And it's going to take a lot of reorganization to get things back. Like the pendulum swings. So this is what happens. You have chaos in a house sometimes when somebody, I've gone through it, depression, suicide, violence, like things get crazy for a while, and then you find your way and you start to, get healthier again. So everybody,
and I'll tell you, I have really kind of lifted up the MAHA movement on my show, because I don't know that I've ever seen anything like it. I am very impressed by the organization and the passion and just the sheer tenacity that you guys bring forth to this. I just think, make the tent bigger, because you're going to need it. And there are a lot of people out there who want to make America healthy again that right now aren't being included in that definition. And so I'm excited to see where you guys go next. So Zen, thank you for joining our show. Good luck with your fight, and we'll be tracking it. Thanks. Thank you, Zen Honeycutt.
Come in the tent anyway, is what I would say. Pitch your own tents too, right? Make it happen anyway. Don't wait for anybody else to do anything. You do it anyway.
Thank you, Zen. Okay, so that was our conversation with Zen Honeycutt. We want to thank her for joining us. I'm Brenda Adhikari. He's Tom Johnson. She is Maggie Bartlett. Please check us out on Substack. Please send us questions or comments to questions@whyshoulditrustyou.net. And we will see you back here on Thursday, as usual.